Hi, everyone. So today, I'm Vayas, and I'm here with Darlene, Nina, William, Michelle, and Tim. And our main topic today is going to be discussing some misconceptions that people who aren't familiar with the with DVU or with having disabilities are what they're not familiar with. And often even people who do want to help us will not always know what we really need. And so we're going to be talking and kind of debunking some different misconceptions and myths. And so but this is going to be an open forum, as Darlene says, so feel free to share anything related to what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Vayas. Yeah, and so that was Vayas, and he is an intern with us at Disability Voices United in the Communication Rights Department. We also, just introduce us real quick, sometimes I forget to do that. I'm Darlene Hansen, and I'm the Director of Communication Rights for Disability Voices United. And then we have, Nina, you want to
go? Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Spiegelman, and I'm the Director of Policy at DVU.
William, you got yours? You're high in there? No, William was set up.
My name is William Del Rosario, and I am a 22-year-old Hispanic Filipino male with black hair, brown eyes, and my pronouns are him. I have autism, apraxia, am a multimodal communicator, and use AAC. I am a great communicator, but in my life, there have been some things I have learned that I would like to share with you about my experiences with AAC and access to communication. Supporting me today is my mom, Michelle. Thank you for making the time to be here today.
Great, thanks, William. And then our Assistant Director to Communication, Tim.
I'm Tim. I'm the Assistant Director of Communications Rights. I have cerebral palsy and have been using a device for over 40 years.
All right, thanks. Okay, well, we'll get started then. So today we do not have a guest speaker, like we've said, we have open forums. So what that means is that we want to have all of us engage in a conversation. We want to remind everybody that, and I see one hand's raised already, so we'll get to that in a second here, but I want to remind everybody that I hope that you were able to hear Bob Williams last month speak to us all. And that was we walked away going, that was amazing. But I think we all had different takeaways. My biggest takeaway was that that we all need to have confidence when people kind of put us in the place of saying, well, you're asking too much. I think that was what he said. Aren't you asking a lot? Was what he gets people saying to him, actually, is that's kind of asking a lot to ask for communication too, or whatever his needs are that are met. And that kind of took me aback, like, why we need to build confidence in ourselves to not feel like we are asking for too much. I remember as a speech and language person, insurance companies saying that communication was a luxury. You know, that they would actually, I don't know that they would say that anymore, hopefully not, but back in the day they did. And to think that communication is a luxury to someone is ridiculous. So I think that was kind of what flashed in my head when Bob said that. And I hope that today we can have some of that conversation. So that's why we were talking, we kind of prepared for ourselves in case you don't have big questions that you want to ask, but just to think about what are some of the myths that we're having to address. Like, isn't that too much to ask? So I'm going to open it up with Rachel. Tim, did you have something first? Okay, hang on. Tim's
if you want to rewatch last month's conversation with Bob Williams, the video is on the Interchange website through Disability Voices United.
So if you haven't seen it, yes. And I think Ed put in our website, look at the communication interchange, the interchange, and you'll be able to see the archived videos. But definitely watch that one. That was a great one. So Rachel, I think you have something to say, and we would love to hear from you.
Rachel says, how should we respond when others question the use of AAC? My feeling is we should go about our lives being fabulous without worry, and when we run into barriers, knock them down with the force of our righteousness. But there are fewer barriers than people imagine. A lot of what holds us back is anticipatory self-censorship and fears. Each one of us who thrives makes those fears less potent. So keep being fabulous, leaders.
Wow, that's really great, Rachel. That's very inspirational too. I love that. I didn't mention, feel free to put your comments in the chat or raise your hand and then you can speak. And we do have the Spanish channel going as well, and feel free to, we have the translations ready to go if you have questions as well. Rachel, I love that. I think what I hear you saying is that we need confidence. We shouldn't let ourselves be a barrier and our worries about what people are going to think.
I agree with you, Darlene. Rachel's comment, it reminded me of Bob in the, in the last session that, like, you get out there with confidence. These are your rights. Any questioning of them, these are your fundamental rights. And so I think that was really great, Rachel.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? I'm looking to see if there's any hands waved. Okay. All right. So here I'm going to throw out, this will get you guys, get your brain juices flowing here. I made a couple of myths. I wrote down a couple of myths for us that we all experience at some point, I'm guessing. And one is, I think it might have been actually brought up in the last session, and that is that AAC, augmentative and alternative communication, will cause your person, your child or adult, to not develop speech. And so sometimes professionals, I think that I did hear that professionals are saying that to families, which is very bizarre to me, because it's a myth. It's not true. Research has always said otherwise. And so for a professional to be saying it is really weird. I understand a family wanting speech, and so that you might think that would be true, but as a professional, we should not be saying that. So if you're a family person and you're hearing these words, I'm giving you permission to ask them where the research is on that. Because, and just know that there is no research on their point of view. That's not true. That there is research, and you can find the research that says that AAC actually having augmentative communication, if a person has a motor system that will allow them to develop speech, it can help that process along. Okay. And speech is only a very, very small part of communication. So without your AAC system, if we were just relying on your speech, we're relying on you to be really good at this, something that just gives us a little bit of information. There's so many other things that we can do that give us information to exchange. So don't buy into that myth. Ryan, you had something you wanted to say? Be sure to unmute.
Hi. Hi. Hi.
Hi, Ryan. Did you have a question for us or a comment? You just want to say hi?
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Good to see you. All right. And Amparo, I'm going to have you unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Since it's an open forum, ACC is one of the biggest things. It is a big deal. I did see Bob speak and he humbled me because they're out advocating for us instead of us doing more and more and more, right? Or at least that's how I felt. But there's also other things that we have out there where they're not protecting the ADCA waiver, which is the DD waiver, the health and safety waiver for the families that need it more. They say, you know, we're allowed to have a roof over our heads, we're allowed to have food, we're allowed to have medical help, but we're not, that's it, that's how we're allowed to help, you know. So that's something that's in danger now. And I don't know what you guys are doing, but we've been flooding social media all week, or this, you know, we got the call out to make sure that the governor signs our budget because we're still waiting on that. But I'm always humbled and grateful, and it shows me, it gives me courage to continue with my child. He's 42 now. And the communication is not just the ACC, but just the communication where he can have an outside world, because he didn't, if it wasn't for for disabilities, oh, I can't think of the name right now. I apologize. I
Yes.
write to no, the one with the technology. They're the ones that came in and brought in the technology. Regional Center didn't know. And for the parents that came after me, I have to apologize that if I didn't teach the parents that came after me any better, regional centers across the state, even the satellite offices, have every single law that's been passed, and it's accessible to us. So it's really, it's hard, because I know that maybe, you know, through the time frame, people have forgotten. It is there, and it is for us to go get. So, and for us to teach others, you know. And maybe I missed a step, and the people that came after me didn't, you know, stick to it. But we have the right to go into regional center, ask for whatever book we want. They're all there, every single law. And it's not what regional centers or DDS presumes for them to be. The laws are written, and they're there for us to follow. So that's just my information for other parents. And, you know, what can I say? I'm an old dinosaur in this, but I was very humbled by Bob. I was very humbled. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. That makes me think about like when people who are supposed to be providing you services, regional center or schools or rehab or whoever is supposed to be helping people, right? When you're met with, no, you're going to have to go ask those people over there, or this isn't our thing. This is something else. Someone else is supposed to do for you. How are you responding to that? I'm wondering if different people in the group have a response, or what do you feel like you need? That's exactly what we want to help you have more support to respond and get your needs met. But what is happening when you say those words or hear those words in meetings? Ryan wanted us to know that he's on the CalTASH board. That's good too. They're always good to advocate for us. I know, Tim, you have a story about people telling you one way, or this is something people hear all the time, I know, about a response that you get when people say this is just a toy to him. Tim has a experience that he can share.
It's a common preconception that most people see many of us using our AAC devices as toys. Many of them who aren't in the field or aren't educated on AAC don't understand that when a child or even an adult is getting their device the very first time, we like to play around with it. Even myself, When I'm testing out a new application, I like to kick the tires, mess around and click on every feature, making sure that I know how to navigate through the app and making sure there are no bugs to report. I also hear from a lot of parents that their child is using their device as a toy and not as a tool. They often say that they feel like their child is not engaging with them and the family thinks that they are wasting their time. Here are some tips that you should consider and consult with your child SLPs, teachers, and occupational therapists. Make sure that the device is positioned correctly for the person. If they are only pressing a certain part of the screen, that means that their device is not at the right spot. We all have different ranges of motion. The device might be slightly off where they don't have full access to the screen or keyboard. Here is another tip. Make sure that the device is using the right voice and vocabulary that is appropriate for the person. If a boy is using an old person's voice, of course, they will be frustrated. If a grown woman is using preschool core words, of course, they cannot express themselves properly. I want to share a story and hopefully this makes sense. I got my first device when I was very young, probably before second grade. I can't remember. My parents also thought that I was using it as a toy because I would say most random things and just push buttons over and over to hear the voice. As an infant, my parents said that I didn't babble like my brothers. I just nodded my head and answered yes and no questions. By playing my device, I was babbling, and then one day, my parents and teachers were asking me real-life questions and not the same simple questions over and over. By me playing around with my device, I was able to answer them. Everyone has their own time frame to speak. Just like my friend Josh, he doesn't use a device and uses his voice to speak. My friend doesn't use complete sentences. He and I can have a conversation together because we know our speech patterns.
Yeah. That's a great, I love that example because I think that the pressing of the buttons, getting labeled as being a toy is a real common response for a lot of different professionals and family members. And I get that it comes from not knowing what to do, but I love your example, Tim, about, well, ask a relevant question, ask a better question, ask something not just so mundane, right? And then you're like, oh, I can answer you because I remember where that button is, right? So that's a great thought and a great suggestion for people. Kathy had written, I requested from Regional Center to pay for a summer program for typing. They denied us over the phone. So she asked for the denial in writing, and then they agreed to pay for the summer program. So again, she didn't just accept that they were giving the denial. She asked for them to give that in writing, and instead they chose to pay for it. That was great advocacy, Kathy. Rachel wrote, what's wrong with playing with AAC? Kids play with their voices all the time. Exactly, Rachel. That's exactly what Tim's saying. It's like just messing around, right?
And Darlene, I have a question for you and Tim. Shouldn't it be a best practice? Isn't it like advised when someone gets a new device to actually literally play with it, to get comfortable with it, to get, to develop sort of the shortcuts and the ease with which you actually use it? I mean, that's what in everyday life, like when I get a new, the next generation iPhone. I'm like, I drive everybody crazy around me playing with whatever the new feature is. But it's how it's how you learn. I mean, so how is it not like a best practice to play with your device?
Right. Well, I think that I think personally, and you all speak in here, okay? But I think it gets into presumption of competence. And so then people assume that's all he knows how to do with it. And if they don't ask a better question, if they don't give the supports, if they don't think about the fact that maybe he's just playing with it and learning it, if they don't think about the fact that I need to play with it and learn it too, because I need to know where these buttons are so I can help him if he's stuck, right? If we just disregard play, then, and we don't presume competence, then we start labeling everything they're doing as play. When you're right, it's just something that we all do, right? It's about how do we perceive these things, and so I think we have to take that into consideration.
It's like getting a car or a wheelchair. I want to test the limits.
That's scary.
You definitely do. Yeah.
Woo. Rachel, did you have something else to say, or did you write it in? Was it in the comments?
Rachel said, yes, we are stronger than we think. Yes, we need to claim our power. Really not so powerless. We can make a difference, and it's our responsibility to do so.
That's right. You're right, Rachel. And Amparo, you had something to add.
But just that, sometimes even like through this whole COVID thing, I get very emotional when I see anybody disrespecting our community in any way or form. I seen one of our cerebral palsy population go out and advocate in the local news, about getting the autism population to get their vaccine, right? We at the beginning, when the vaccine was coming out. And the only thing the reporter had to say about the beautiful consumer was that he spoke with his feet. I mean, seriously, I cried for 2 weeks. How dare they? Society still doesn't see us. And that really still affects me because we're still fighting for inclusion. I mean, literally still fighting for inclusion. So, and it's Disability Thrives. That's the organization. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, you're right. It's we got to work on changing people's perceptions, right?
Yeah.
Ed, you had a thing. She's using. You want to say it, Ed? Where are you, Ed?
Sorry, Darlene, my sound cut out for a second. Could you repeat that?
Did you want to say what you wrote?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Hi, folks. My name is Ed Hertzel. I'm the Communications and Development Coordinator for Disability Voices United.
You got muffed. Hang on, Ed. You're muffled.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Sorry, it was over my speaker. My name is Ed Hertzel. I'm the Communications and Development Coordinator for Disability Voices United. I'm a white butch against a white marbled DVU background wearing glasses. And I just said, Tim, that I thought your comparison to babbling is so important because that's a phase of language acquisition or language learning. And people with all communication modes deserve to go through all stages of language learning or acquisition, as the case may be. Language deprived deaf people, people who would benefit from ASL or who need ASL access but aren't given it at an early age, go through similar. They'll learn signs and people will think that they are simply babbling or playing with their hands, but that's a phase of language development. So I just thought that was so prescient, and I wanted to thank you for that, Tim.
Yeah, we probably need to keep reminding people of that you have to explore things when you're learning things, right? And we shouldn't discredit that opportunity for AAC users as well. I love that. William was saying, yes, the first time most people get new technology, they play with it. How many of us tried silly Zoom filters? I did. That's what William said. We all did, right? And Lourdes says, Ed is amazingly caring and nice. Thank you for the work you do. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's another myth that comes out, and that is readiness. Has anybody ever been met with the fact that someone will tell your person isn't ready yet? Doesn't have these certain skills to be ready to have some kind of technology that would benefit them for communication? Nobody? Okay. Well, that would be a good, if you have, raise your hand if you want to talk. Oh, Amparo, you got that?
Yeah, well, no, I didn't get that. But what I didn't get is anything offered for me for my son. So my
Oh.
son he speaks 3 languages. But because he has seizures every single day, I'm still dealing with the inclusion part. That means he cannot go to a program, he cannot go to a day program, he can't go to a work program, he can't do any of that, right? So the fact that I had to go find it because nobody told me, I mean, seriously, it's like nothing, to be able to get him something while I get him to walk again, because he's walking, not on his own, but he's walking, he's starting to walk on his walker. But nobody told me. I had to find it in the internet myself and bring Disability Thrives into regional center when they try to fight it. Of course, I know how to take it to the table. I took it to the table, and I'm spreading the word for anybody who needs technology, who needs their child evaluated, wheelchairs, adaptive, anything that is there. My God, they didn't tell us. Once you lose your PPO, like I had to, because I had to stay home and take care of my son, it was a completely different ballgame. So yeah, it is. We have some serious disparities out there that people aren't even aware of, that we don't even see yet, or we don't acknowledge. Our system is completely broken, and they send us to this committee and that committee and that committee, and all of us are stakeholders of the state of California. We're stakeholders of DDS. We're stakeholders of every regional center, because we cannot advocate only for our own child or our own child's disability. We have to advocate for all. That's the way I believe it. Beyond and above California.
Yeah. And I think that it goes along that line with the readiness thing, is that people will kind of like, they kind of want to push it to the back burner and say, well, he's not quite ready yet. I don't know that would be appropriate yet. I don't think we have this yet for them. He has to get these skills first, right? I love the term of ableism and the definition of ableism, and that people are starting to push that around, because it really is that. It is, I really don't know how any child in 2022 is not ready for technology when every home has a smartphone. Maybe I'm overgeneralizing, but let's assume every phone has a smartphone or an iPad or some kind of remote that kids are seeing and exploring with and playing with. And if you don't get ready for that, you start using it and you learn how to use it the right way, right? That you don't get ready for using a remote control on a TV. Someone teaches you how to use the buttons on the actual remote, right? So if you need to use an iPad because you're going to be or use an AAC system of some sort because you're a non-speaking individual, you're not going to get ready over somewhere else doing it in some pretend fashion for the skills to communicate with. So we have to get rid of that readiness myth, and I think it's going to take us not settling for that response back, like, well, he's not quite ready yet. Okay, William, you had something to add?
Picture exchange communication systems, or PECs, are a way of communicating using small picture cards to make requests or labels. This modality of communicating is not an uncommon way for communication to start for many students in special education. For me, this system was very limiting. The PECs cards were stored in a binder with Velcro to hold them in place. As my vocabulary grew, my book got very large and was hard for me to carry. Another problem was my vocabulary was limited to the words my teachers chose to put in my book. A lot of time was spent practicing drills to make requests for my favorite things. This made it hard for me to access academics because there was so much focus on the nouns and labels, not comments or opinions to let my original thoughts out. Thankfully, my mom saw that I was interested in the alphabet and she began to teach me to spell. She also found someone that could do an augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC assessment, and I was given an iPad with Proloquo to go. This opened a whole new way for me to communicate. Having access to a full vocabulary and ultimately 26 letters with voice output gave me the tools I needed to learn. It has taken some time to get my team trained on supporting me, but I can say with certainty staying with PEX would not have brought me to where I am today. If your team is telling you to start with PEX first, I would encourage you to get an evaluation for an AAC device. There are many apps that can be customized to your needs.
That's such a great point. You know, PEX, for example, Picture Exchange Communication System, does not have any voice output to it, right? And I would guess that speaking and non-speaking people in the room would want to have their voice heard, literally speak, you know, something spoken out loud. So to just stick around for the PEX and make that that alone, never mind the spelling and the ability to communicate what you're thinking, that's going to be difficult with a limited form like PEX. So I get what PEX is for, but yeah, William, you're right. It's not the be all. You're not done talking about communication services because you got PEX, right? Kathy was saying that getting the IEP process to paint the picture that her son was a communication device user. I'm guessing you're saying it was helpful. Making sure Regional Center knew that he was an AAC user, having them in the IEP meetings so that they could hear that. Tommy said there's also a lack of understanding of the sensory motor difficulties. The communication skills must be practiced with the support of someone or people who believe in the potential of the person or student. You don't hand someone a bike and say they aren't ready just because they are falling off. They need to practice with someone who is patient and believes in them. Exactly. Time is important. That's great.
And building on all of those comments and what William said, and it really goes along with what you were talking about, Darlene, for readiness. I just remember, it brings back terrible memories of IEP days where you have something like PEX and it's sort of like, well, you know, you can get stuck there, you know, for a lifetime. It's like, you haven't really, whatever in their mind was, mastered this, or, you know, so you forget a device, you know, you're kind of stuck in this one thing. And the notion that actually maybe several of these modalities might be helpful in different ways, you know, that that it actually can expand someone's readiness or whatever. So yeah, these points are so great, only they bring back very bad memories, but hey.
Tim, you had something to add?
I have to share you all a story. When my speech therapist caught me swearing in the hallway in school with my natural voice when I was in 5th grade, she actually got proud of me and we started using appropriate vocabulary to use with my device. No more baby talk, but I also limit my swearing in school and at home.
Swearing's the swearing, that brings up memories for me. Tommy was saying that, Nina, we should have a trigger warning for your things. But I mean, I've had students that the principals wanted to suspend them for swearing on their AAC. And I'm like, okay, he's exploring this right now. Okay, explain to him how this isn't going to fly right here. But don't just out of the gate suspend him. But yeah, I can list off a few principles that we had this conversation with. And And swearing is social, but you got to do it in the right places. But again, it gets back to ableism, right? Into that whole, we hold people with disabilities to a different bar, like they have to be perfect. Like if I heard you swearing because I was sitting next to you because I'm your support person, that counts as suspension? No, you're sitting there because you're the person that helps them, you know? Lourdes says it's a normal part of life and it's an outlet to let their emotions, a lot of that build up frustration, right? And it's a learning time. It's a learning opportunity to say, there's an appropriate place for everything. And out of respect, here's how you talk to so-and-so, and here's how you talk to this person, right? But these are learning opportunities. I think Tim's generating something else. He's gonna have something to add to this. So I'm gonna wait for a second.
We are not all saints, and nor we want to.
That's right. That's right. Wait, sometimes you have to like think about what you're saying, you know, as the speaking person, as the professional person, like, or the parent person, like, what are we saying? Yeah. William's generating something too here, but Nina, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about this. This comes up as a barrier when you're in a school system and the school says that you can't take your device home with you because it's a school's device, and yet you don't have. That means then that you don't have a system at home.
Right. You know, when I was looking this up, I've done this sort of from time to time because I know that when we did our surveys, you know, over the past couple of years, that came up. That definitely came up as a barrier that this happens. The school says, nope, you got to put it in the locker and you can get it tomorrow. And after hearing Bob last time, the thought of that, the absurdity of that, anyway, as Amparo would say, good old Disability Rights California has a great fact sheet about, they call it, for IEP world, often they use the term assistive technology, but so it's, you know, assistive technology in your child's school. And definitely the answer to, can my child take home equipment that the school buys? And the answer is yes, absolutely. If your child needs the equipment at home to make progress towards IEP goals. So a hint or a tip is make sure that you put that in the, you should be entitled to it, whether or not it's spelled out in the IEP, you know, in your IEP, but you should put it in there, you know, that, you know, access to the device, to practice, to do homework, to practice your skills, that needs to happen outside of school. And that is so fundamental that it's just so disturbing that comes up, although it does. But, you know, so, you know, you have to, just as a reminder, it's always good to put that in your IEP.
Yes, Ryan agrees with you. He says unacceptable in caps. It is unacceptable. But what about like for the persons who are transitioning or are in their adult life, and maybe you had a device or a system that was set up for you at school, and now you're going to adult life? How are people, I mean, I know what I would suggest, but I'm just wondering, how are people making sure they have something in that transition? Does anybody have that issue coming up? Or maybe as an adult, getting that same service, that same ability to communicate? Has anybody been denied communication because of this lag time, this little bridge time?
So regarding the lag time, I haven't actually been in that situation just because I had my meetings with the Department of Rehabilitation, but it's a real issue when it comes to devices that the school buys. If parents are able to buy a device, then it's not as much of an issue because that system does not need to be returned. But in my experience, when certain devices are from the school, then it becomes a problem because like you kind of rely on the grace of the school system or of the teachers to allow the person to borrow to continue borrowing it
Right.
before they get their appointment with the Department of Rehabilitation.
Yeah. And now you're talking to lots of different kinds of technologies, just not only augmented communication, right?
Yes. Yeah, like anything, even a regular computer.
Yeah. And how about for you, William? You had something.
This reminds me they can't take away our words just because they aren't what you want to hear. My teacher once took away my device because I was using it to video talk.
Yeah, no, that should never happen, but it does, I know. Yeah, you're right. It shouldn't. You know?
You raised a really good point, Darlene, about readiness transition when you leave, and I mean, I know, I'd love to hear your suggestions for people, but it just underscores how important it is to get, whether if you're going to be dealing with DOR or certainly the regional center. I mean, I would start with the regional center and say, part of my transition, and that should be in your transition plan, is, I don't want to have there should be a smooth transition with respect to necessary devices and,
Right.
starting to get the, that funding, not wait until, you're done, and then you have months of wrangling with the regional center over it.
Right, I have a friend who isn't he's not a student, he's in his 30s. And he's been using AAC for years. I don't know if you're on this call. I don't know, I can't say his name, but anyways. And when he needed a new, like he just used an iPad, right? And he needed a new iPad because he had an old iPad, it couldn't be updated anymore. And then regional center came in and started saying that he needed assessments. But it was, which of course is going to be a barrier because it's going to take a long time. But he has a system that works for him. And, I mean, we already knew what 2022 version looked like for him. But to say, okay, now we have to we have to get in line for an assessment before he can get a new system, which is just going to be the exact same thing that he had before, was going to be a huge barrier. Now we worked around it and we kept reminding people that didn't make any sense, that this is a system he's been using and just needs a new one. He literally just needs a new one. And you don't need an assessment to say that. But they kept going down their heads was like, oh, you have to go to an assessment process. But there has to be, if that's the norm for them to say, okay, fine, but we need to understand that doesn't make any sense to ask for an assessment when you just need a replacement, right? I mean, it doesn't to me anyways.
Absolutely. I just got, as Tommy noticed, I just got so triggered again. This just makes my head explode because it happens, as sort of similar things in self-determination. A person who is known for 20 years plus more to the regional center as using a device as needed, was working, it just needs updating. That system is the one. And to have to go through the time and expense, they have the authority, but it is, I would absolutely push back. I would go to a supervisor, I would point out the absurdity of it. They have authority to ask for assessments, but they can't, it's unreasonable and they're wasting money. That's a waste of tax money. So I just
going to cost more than the iPad.
Yeah, I think it has to be, in my mind, it has to be pushed back on. And I would absolutely take it above the service coordinator or case manager right away, so it doesn't languish there, because time is of the essence in communication.
Right. Tommy.
Sorry, trying to make sure I'm unmuted. Hi.
Hi.
I was just listening to this and I'm thinking about all the different things you're talking about, the transition issues and the school not allowing for people to have iPads at certain times or not allowing for language that's not school related. And it feels like as families, we probably need to advocate for the regional center to actually be at the core of the communication device rather than the school district. I suppose then there might be issues with the school saying, well, we're not going to use it for education because we didn't provide it. I don't know if it would work that way, but it seems like that might alleviate some of this problem, because then it would say, okay, communication is part of the person's whole life. And so maybe regional center can somehow be responsible for that. And part of that is I go to school, and part of that is I spend time with friends and my family. And part of that is I get to an age where I'm no longer with the school district, so that it eliminates some of these like distinctions. It's just something that I need for my life personally, you know? So I know that that's not how it's done currently. The regional center still says, well, right now it's the school district, but communication is not just purely an educational matter.
Right.
I mean, maybe speech therapy, you know, I don't know, that probably shouldn't be either, but the device, the ability to speak and communicate is something you do hopefully from morning till night, you know? So that might be something to really look at for families, especially when, you know, if you have younger kids and you're in the school districts and you're in the school system, you know, to look at that might be something to consider.
That is a great point. I think the underlying issue, and it's very hard to break through the barrier of it, is that, you know, we're all so ingrained, it's so ingrained in us that the regional center is the payer of last resort. So the school district is considered basically generic services. So they will say by law, they have to pay for it. However, what I think you're talking about is a great thing from the earliest possible age to say, okay, maybe initially, or, you know, there's sort of an assignment of responsibility, but let's get it recognized in both the IEP and the IPP that this is fundamental. This is communication. This is part of their life. And number one, no gaps, and like sort of a constant recognition that this has to be covered. So, you know what I mean? Maybe I think taking a lot of your points and thinking about making sure the regional center doesn't get off the hook of being there to understand that this is integral to life. You know, and so I think it's just a great point, but that generic services thing, there's no kind of escaping at least a part of that, you know, the payment part. So,
and I'm just going to add real quick, and I see two hands raised, so I'll go there too, and then we've got a couple of comments in the chat. But to add to that point, it's not just regional center, but insurance companies as well. So if insurance companies will only give communication devices when there's a medical reason, which of course everybody would have, because if you need to say that you are hurting or in pain or sick, automatically you need a communication device, right? So that's really easy to get in there. But I've actually gone out to schools where the device is coming from the family because the insurance bought it. The insurance company paid for the services, but they were only allowed to do the social communication stuff, programming. It was a pre-programmed device. It wasn't a ABC format device. And so the person had no vocabulary in it that he could use at school. So if he was going to reading class or math class or whatever, no, the person was just able to do social communication. And so there was this big controversy going on between the school and the medical insurance provider person, the speech person, as to how we were going to get that remediated, because it was given by the insurance company for home reasons, which weren't allowed to be school reasons. It was the bizarrest conversation that you would have to have with a person, which brings me to, I see you guys with your hands raised, but brings me to that question that Christiana put out, where she said that the school would not let her add vocabulary that they would want at home. So that required him to have two devices, which makes learning curve difficult, or the schools would not permit a device that the parent requires. So either way, they're saying, no, we can't have the same vocabulary on his device, which again makes no sense, because a communication device is your communication. So why would you have a different program system for school and home? That would be like saying you're going to speak Spanish at home and English at school. Well, we have a system for that too, right? So why can't it? Doesn't make any sense. So I think Christiana and anybody else, because I know this is a common conversation, is that the school system should be providing an opportunity for you as family to put in the vocabulary that you need for home. Like a lot of times I would have outside providers, they would want to have a folder in the system that was just for their therapy services. And that didn't make any sense to me, because the person needs to say these same words all day long. It's already in there. Use the ones that he has, right? We don't want him just talking to you and using this other vocabulary. It's in his device. He needs to learn how to use his whole device. So people have to think about how communication happens for us as people. It's a whole vocabulary that you learn to use in a context. It's not a context vocabulary that you then use a different vocabulary in each context. It's a whole vocabulary. I mean, for everybody else, it should be for you guys too. Amparo. Oh, you're still muted.
Yeah, I had to unmute myself. What I wanted to say is, if we walk into the school district, if we are age, if we already got the technology, the school may not refuse it. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a wheelchair, a communication device, cane, whatever it is, it walks in the door with you. All you need is a doctor's note that it's part of your requirement, and you walk in the door. They can't tell you what kind of speech and any of that if you get that opportunity to walk in the door with your technology. If you have to take the school's technology because you're school age, yeah, regional center can't pay. That's just part of it. But if you're unfortunate and you don't have any technology by the time you get to school, that just shows you how bad our medical system is broken, right? And the disparities that are happening in it. But then once you do get into the school, you can have the doctor order them to give you one. That's how you get your devices or your needs met. You have to start with medical, your doctors, and then take it into school. And I kid you not, that will stop all the drama. Thank you.
Thanks, Amparo. William.
We need to stop making communication an accommodation. It should be the expectation everywhere.
Absolutely. I love when you say that. William, you could say that like every day, and I love it. Because it isn't an expectation. It is an accommodation. It is an opportunity that we give you, sometimes for some people only in certain hours of the day, right? And that's not right. Tim.
Darlene, do you remember when insurance companies would lock your device down because it was only being funded for communication only, and not the internet or any other app besides speech generating device? You would need to pay the vendor to unlock it for you. I'm showing my age on how old I am.
I do remember that. And are you saying they don't do that anymore? I thought they still did. But yeah, what he's talking about is that when you buy a device through a company like Prinky Romic or Dynavox or any of those medical based devices, not the iPad. I'm not talking about the iPad. Then because it's a computer based system, it has access to the internet. But because the medical insurance are paying for it, they're not paying for you to have access to the internet, they say. So you actually have to pay to turn off the access to the internet so that the insurance company will fund the communication device. So, and that's how it works. So that's so weird. So how do you communicate through email without the internet? Right? I mean, that's how we communicate. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay, Rick's saying we advocate for those under adult guardianship with someone other than the person with the disabled person trusts, loves, and respects. How many of the people on this call are involuntarily adult guardianships, and does DVU have an active program to help them? That's a different segment of, I hear you. But in terms of the guardianship, that's a different segment of this DVU. So this one's just about communication, but we are working on the guardianship issues. And so we support supported decision-making, but understand that there is guardianship out there. And then Ryan saying crazy, I guess, I think to what I said, right? Ryan, where did you go? But I'm assuming, yeah, what I said. Okay, Veas, do you want to talk about what about when people are denied access to the communication in the community?
Yes, so I am blind and I don't type to communicate, but I do use communication devices in the form of Braille note takers and iPhones. And I guess I'll share two experiences. Fortunately, once I've had my communication device, which my parents really, really had to advocate and fight for, but once I had that, I was not normally denied it. But so in that case, two situations stand out. The first was during a retreat that I was going to during the planning meeting, which I didn't attend because it was for the parents about the kids. And so they, my church, who are overall really great, and I've participated with things with them before then and since then, but they told me that, or they told my parents that I could use it, like I could use my Braille device as long as I didn't do things like go on the internet, which, or use it more than I needed to, which to me, I thought was fair enough, but it is one of the only instances where they were a teacher or anyone has been reluctant for me to take the device. And then during my college classes, this was the first story was in high school. During college, most of my teachers were very lenient about me having a device because they don't directly deal with what the accommodations are. That's kind of between me and disability services. And then they talk with me later about what I need. Sometimes they do clarify with disability services, but in this case, I had an exam where my teacher wanted me to not use my communication device and only rely on having my proctor read and write it. His concern was me going online, or maybe just like having the possibility of cheating, I guess. But he never actually told that to me directly. It was to the disability services. And so fortunately, because the idea was I was going to have someone read me the test and I would write the answers, but because I couldn't do that anymore. So fortunately, my one of the disability services people in my college used her judgment, and she was like, oh yeah, you can write the answers and then just dictate them. And that made things much more helpful, but that she had that foresight. That was in my undergraduate. So yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, I think that does happen for AAC users as well, in that people, especially those of you who use communication partners, where some of the universities or college system people will question the role of the communication partner in that, for example, that testing context, right? Where disability services might say, okay, you can go to another space and you can take the test in this other space and we'll have a proctor there. But people have had to come up against, but you can't have your communication partner with you. But yet you're a person who doesn't communicate unless you have your communication partner with you. So then you have to respond to that, right? And start setting the stage for, no, I can't communicate without my person though. So I won't be able to take this test in any environment without my person with me. And I know that the persons that I've supported to answer that question was, and what we've done is we've just spent a lot of time talking to the disability services department people explaining all that goes into meeting those communication needs for those of you who need communication partners, or trained communication partners. Because they need to understand, like for some people, it's about staying regulated. And so your communication partner helps you stay regulated as well. So it's not about, I can't answer the questions, I just won't be able to initiate my movements, and I won't be able to stay focused because I need my person to help me do that part. So we have to remember that people aren't used to this. And so sometimes it is going to take some time, but if they can't hear you when you start informing them of your reality, then that's when we need to get a little more irritated. But I think that this is new for people. Rachel said, why do they think we are all cheaters? We aren't the ones devaluing education, right? Yeah, you guys, people, you're there because you want to be, right? I don't know. I think they just
must be a cheat.
Say it again, Tim. Sorry.
Your communication partner must be a genius to know what is going on with all of your classes and your 12 to 16 units.
They must be. There's so many possibilities, but you're right. I mean, I don't know what they usually don't have a response as to what they think is happening. They just know that that can't happen. And so we have to point it out that, well, it needs to. Tommy says, Rachel, that is such a great point. You're fighting for an education. Why are you going to cheat yourself out of it? Exactly. That's such a good, yeah, the two of you putting together that visual of why would you spend all the time and effort making this happen? Yeah. But that does happen to people, having to explain, like Bea is saying, why do I need these supports? Even though to the people who said, sure, you could come in with your supports, right? Whitney says it's almost like denying translation services to someone who speaks another language. That's a good one. That's a good analogy. Yeah, like you can have the translation in your class, but when it comes to the test, you can't because we don't know what that person's saying to you. Is that what they're saying? I don't know. Very good point, Whitney. Anybody got anything else? Well, we love hearing from all of you AAC users too, you know. Okay, so here's something, I don't know if we've thought about this since Bob spoke to us, but okay, this isn't even on the script. I'm just going to bring this up because this is hot in my head, because he kind of alluded to it. What do we think about IQ testing for AAC users? Bob kind of alluded to the fact that that this is being addressed, and maybe, you know, we don't know how soon it will be fixed. But what about AAC users having to take IQ tests and then being placed and measured and everything else that goes on in your life based on these standardized assessments? Anybody had to do that? I see Rachel typing, so that's why I'm pausing here. And is there any way we can advocate for this now without it being passed as a law, right? Rachel says, don't cooperate. It is invalidated and it's a racist concept. That's a good point, Rachel.
I love that because what that just leads me to the question in K through 12 is IQ testing required or done? I do remember, again, more triggering, fighting to not cooperate, like Rachel says, to say no, we'll pass, we decline. But there was like pressure to get these like IQ and IQ-like kind of evaluations at triennials and that kind of thing? Is it a requirement, or how does it, I don't even know how it is supposed to work.
Well, it's not really a requirement, but people are being told it's a requirement.
Just like these other things. Okay, good to know.
You have to determine eligibility. And so if you have cerebral palsy or autism or certain things automatically get you eligibility. Now, that doesn't mean that you need services just because you're eligible for them. Then you have to determine need, right? But the IQ test doesn't fall into that picture unless somebody makes it about the IQ test. Amparo?
What I wanted to say is, we don't have the IQ test anymore. We used to have them at regional center, but we don't anymore. That means the schools aren't supposed to. And it's cerebral palsy, autism, Down syndrome, and epilepsy. That's what we cover. So beyond others. And I wanted to tell the young man, I apologize, I didn't know. I am a Latina with gray hair that I earned gracefully fighting for everybody's disability rights. So no, we don't have to take it. That is, that's an insult and discriminatory and a violation of our human rights.
Well, just to know that IQ tests are not standardized on anybody who uses AAC. So if you're giving an IQ test because you need that standardized score, if that's what they're saying to you, unfortunately for you and them, there isn't a test that's standardized on an AAC user population. So you could even say, I would agree if you had one, but you don't. I mean, maybe if you wanted to. But the reality is that there aren't any AAC system testings that are standardized on AAC users. I'm going to go to William and then Bass really quick. The nonverbal IQ tests are ridiculous for anyone and with sensory motor differences. So true. So if you're experiencing the world in a different fashion, it'd be hard to measure you based on a standardized lifestyle. Bella says standardized tests violate our human rights. Probably would agree with that. Bass?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quickly, I think that the IQ tests, sometimes I think in the way that the regional centers do them and to discriminate is really wrong. And I think that, but I actually have taken a test before, which multiple students also took who had no disabilities to see if they could get into the gifted and talented program, which I was not able to because the accessibility of it wasn't that great. But I'm not sure if some of this is also about IQ tests as a whole too, because it doesn't just have to do with how people can communicate. It has to do with everyone and whether this non-standardized is right for them.
That's right, and it's not giving any useful information, unless you're teaching to an IQ test, which you're not supposed to do. Let's see, Lourdes says, is it the IQ test part of the regional center assessment for becoming a client? And I don't think it is. They might say they're going to give one, but it's not an IQ test is not a requirement. You have to have a developmental delay to be a regional center client, but that doesn't have to be determined through an IQ test. There are developmental norms and scales and such, or you can qualify because you have autism or cerebral palsy or something. One of the 7 things. Kira says, I agree with everyone here. IQ tests and general standardized tests are fundamentally flawed. They're designed on cultural-based bias and do not take into account the wide variation of human intelligence and creativity. That's true. That's true. Tim?
Having a standard test is wrong because many of us have learned differently, such like the PEC system that William mentioned. I personally failed all of the standardized tests in school because I learned way more differently than my able-bodied brothers did.
Yep, and there just isn't a measurement. So we need to say that. You don't have one. You know, and even the Tony, which they'll throw out there for some of you guys, they'll say they're going to give you the test of nonverbal intelligence. It still requires you to communicate back, right? It might be looking at how you think through things through non-speaking, but you still have to communicate something back. So if you can't do that, then it's of no use to their quest, whatever that might be. Lourdes and David, I want to make sure no one is talking in the Spanish channel that wants to ask questions and such. I realize what time it is and you guys have been so quiet. Not Lourdes, sorry, Lorna. I had Lourdes in my head. No? Okay, if you have anything, please pop on with this. All right. Okay, so one thing that comes up, and we probably don't have tons of time to get into this, we can get into this next time too, but is how do you get trained communication partners? How do you get the supports that you need when you use AAC in terms of support services, right? Support staff, support however it needs to be described for you. How do we write? Not always a specific person for just the reason of communication. So the communication support is different for all of us, for all of you, right? So Tim's needs for communication support is different than William's needs for communication support. It's different than Baez's needs for communication support, or Ryan's, or Rachel's, or any of you all that are in there, in the group here. So I think we need to think about, and we've talked about this periodically, that how can we help figure this out? How can we, I don't know where Jessie is, but how can we standardize, she's gone now. Okay, how can we standardize a communication partner, and what would it look like? I mean, we can't standardize it, but what's it gonna look like to say that we have a way of describing communication support that people need? So again, if we don't talk about this a lot today, that's okay, but I think that we should start talking about that as a group, because it could be something we could work on. Amparo?
In my case, in my son's case, his communication is done through Disability Thrives. They do it through, right now they're doing it through Zoom. And then he could take classes through Zoom because, you know, he's a liability. Remember that one? We're still fighting inclusion, but I get that part, that we do need specialists, and we need to see every person has a specific need in a specific way, but we also need to take in consideration, seriously consideration, even though the topic is ACC today, is that we are having a righteously big crisis of employees in the state of California. So getting our consumers, our beautiful clients, the help that they need has been harder than ever, quality staff. So taking that into consideration, please, parents or stakeholders, do your due diligence. You know, it's difficult right now, these times that we're passing. Thank you.
Yeah, hard to get the support that we need. William's putting something together here. I encourage any of you who are at home and are AAC users, and if there are specific topics or things that you want addressed that you don't have the time to put into your device, or, I mean, if you can email us or have someone email for you, please email Timmerai at dvu.org. How's it go? dvunited.org, right? So it's
Info at-
Dar-
Or yeah, at dvunited.org, whatever, yeah.
yeah, so Darlene at dvu, I can't say it out loud, I can only type it, dvunited.org, or Tim at dvunited.org. We should write it down. There you go. Thank you, Ed.
Howard's got his hand up. Howard McBroom's got his hand up.
Yes, Howard. Wait, you have to unmute.
Hello, Darlene. This is Howard, and I just wanted to comment that, intelligent tests measure only one ability. They don't measure all abilities, and in particular, they don't measure emotional ability. And emotional abilities are often far more important than just sheer intelligence. There are a lot of people who are extremely intelligent, but when it comes down to emotional ability, they don't have the skills of a turtle. Some of those people become shooters because they're bright intellectually, but they don't have the emotional skill, but social skills they need to survive in society. They can't work their way around problems. They don't know what to do. They come from bad backgrounds, criminal families and that kind of thing. And when you have that kind of a problem, when you're intellectually bright, and you want to do good and make the world a better place, but you just don't have the skill to do it with. You don't just have the emotional and social skill to be able to work your way around problems and make your life better. You're not going to have a very good life. The best you can hope for when you're in that kind of situation, Darlene, the best that you can hope for is a life of bare naked survival, just barely hanging on by your fingertips. And all too often, the world is a purgatory at best, a hell at worst. And that's not a way to live. And we really need to find a way to get these people off what I call loser street and get them onto winner's way, because the best they can hope for, like I say, is a life of failure, defeat, just barely surviving from one day to the next. And there really are only three ways out. Only, like I said, a life of failure and defeat. Number two, suicide. And number three, you can buy your assault weapon and become a shooter. And more people seem to be choosing the latter option today.
Yeah.
Much to our dismay.
I think you're right. And I'm hoping that our culture and our community at large is appreciating the way we all regulate ourselves emotionally and present ourselves emotionally and socially, and acknowledging that that's just as much a part, at least, of who we are as our IQ, as you're saying, right? It's a whole picture. It's not just one thing. And that applies to everyone, I think. You're right. Thanks, Howard.
Intellect is important, but it's only one skill, and there are many other skills that are more important.
Exactly. Very good. Thank you. Medalia. Go ahead and unmute yourself on Medalia.
And this is something I think our society does need to learn, that, intellect is not everything. It's important, but it's not everything. And there are many different kinds of skills. And one thing I think we really need to do is we really need to find a way to make everybody fulfill their potential, because everybody can do something. We're good. Everybody is good at something. It may not be obvious, but everybody is good at something. So what we have to do is find out what they're good at, play on their strength, play to their strength, not their weakness. That's what person-centered planning and self-determination is all about, darling. Playing to your strength and not your weaknesses.
You're right.
You do that with more than just developmentally disabled people. We need to do that with everybody. And especially for these people who are at high risk of becoming, school shooters and that kind of thing. We need to find a way to help them develop their strength so that they don't get down to believing, hey, if I got that power, I'm going to get me an assault weapon and show the world how powerful I can be. And we need
That's
to
right.
find a way to get to these people, find out what they're good at, help them develop their strength so they don't go down that terrible route.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And self-determination and pushing through the plan, I think, can help a great deal in that.
I think so. That's our hope, right? Yeah.
It's a hope.
Thank you, Howard. Cristiano, do you think that we only have a few minutes, I know, but do you think that the best practices for our personality traits in combination with training and a description of what the training would look like? Are there vendors to train communication partners? There are getting to be more and more people who are training communication partners. So yes, it depends on what your needs are, of course, and how, but there are groups, and I think we'll probably put that on our list of things to talk about next week, Tim, next month, is communication partners. It's such a big picture thing. I think that the conversation needs to bring it down and help us fine tune it a little bit. William, you had something?
Access however we need it should be the standard. We wouldn't give everyone the same walker or wheelchair. If we can presume supporting mobility, we can presume supporting communication to access the community.
Excellent point. Yes, yes. And Gina says, and I love this point, Gina, we got to put this into the picture, wherever Gina is, there you are. I think we need to be careful about how we treat our staff. She's a big advocate for that. I think that's a good point. What do we expect from our staff, and how are we treating them? I think that's excellent. And some of that comes from what kind of freedom do you have to treat your staff the way you want to? I know Tim's had that experience. So I think that's a perfect other side of the coin that we have to talk about. Thank you, Gina. Okay, I think we're going to say our goodbyes here because I want to make sure we're done in time for the 5:30 mark. Oh, so Maria says, who will fund communication partners? Well, it should be regional center, technically. That they should be funding the staff. Then the staff should be trained to be your communication partner, right? But I mean, because you can't have a communication partner just on a certain hour of the day, right? We want you to have communication partners all day. Amparo? Hang on. Here you go. Oops, sorry. Again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so you have to remember that some stakeholders are going to walk in with communication devices. So primary, when it starts when they're children, it is insurance responsibility. So our medical insurance, right, for our children. And then when it goes into the school, if they get it then, if it becomes their problem. And then of course we need after hours for communication, so we can get that from regional centers. School hours or school hours, any need that needs to be covered. Yes, regional center is a payer of last resort, but any need that needs to be covered outside the school time, medical need, communication need, mobility need, any of that has to be covered by regional center because it's no longer the problem of the school district. It becomes regional center's problem after school. Thank you.
That's right. And that's what Maria was adding to it. But if a client is still in school, right, school, then during the school hours, it's a school system. After school hours, it would be regional center. So they have to stop making communication unmet need. I hate to hear that. All right, you all. We're gonna meet next month on July, I don't know the number, sorry, off my head.
I think it's the 19th.
Is it the 19th? Okay, thank you, Bayes.
List box. Switch password.
Yes, July 19th. Okay, so we'll meet July 19th. And I think we'll probably be talking, oh, Medalia, did you come up with? I'm gonna unmute you again. Medalia?
Sí, yo quería preguntar algo. Mi
Yes.
pregunta es, yo le pedí una evaluación independiente al distrito. Al principio me dijeron que no, que era muy caro, pero apelamos y luego me llamaron por teléfono y me dijo una persona que me estaba mandando una dirección y un teléfono de un especialista para la visión de mi hijo y que esa era la evaluación independiente. Y yo le dije, no me han dicho nada por correo electrónico que me lo aprobaron. Y me dijo, no, esta es la evaluación independiente. Ahora yo estoy confundida. No sé si eso es verdad o me está tratando de pues, como diciendo,
Yeah, you
como
should have a paper trail.
haciéndome
Yeah.
tonta o no sé, estoy confundida, no sé qué hacer.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so tell me, is it okay to start talking, David? Okay, so for you, Medalia, yeah, you should call this sounds like a school district, right? Because it's independent evaluation. So call your case manager and say, I'm getting phone calls on to do an assessment. I wasn't aware that you approved an assessment. And can you give me some paperwork on that? You should be, you have to be a part of the choosing of the independent evaluation. You know, there should be some paperwork. It needs to be a lot more formal than that. Don't just do it by phone, random people calling you. That doesn't sound right at all. So I would follow up with your case manager. Amparo, we got 1 minute.
I just wanted to make a correction. The school is sending her, may I say it in Spanish? The school te está mandando la escuela a que hagas una evaluación para tu criatura y no te va a pagar. Eso no te va a cobrar. Eso no tiene nada que ver con Regional Center. Hazlo, es beneficio para tu niño y esa carta la puedes usar for Regional Center. I'll say it in English now. I said the school district is making a free evaluation of her child for the needs. It's a medical evaluation that has nothing to do with Regional Center whatsoever, and she could use that evaluation and take it to Regional Center. That has the question that she asked, that's my interpretation of it. ¿Eso es correcto? ¿Eso es lo que ocupabas? Ask her if that's correct, because you took it down the wrong way, so I was just trying to fix it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm confused now, but so the school is asking she was asking the school for an independent evaluation?
She needed something from the school, and the school is giving her a free evaluation for her child. So that she needs to do that. That is the school's responsibility. Regional Center has absolutely nothing to do with that. That's a benefit that she gets, and it's free. It's no cost to her. So yes, she should go to that and get that done. It would be to her child's benefit. It's a professional. It's not, it won't be biased. It's not, oh, it's the school, they're going to be on the school side. No. So, SSI does that too. So no, go ahead and do it, please. It's a benefit for your child. Regional Center has absolutely nothing to do with it. It is a professional that it does not sway what the school wants. It does a professional evaluation.
Right. My concern is that if it's the school system and she doesn't know who these people are, she should find out and have that part written down.
But yes, that's not what she was asking. So
okay. That's fine. Okay. All right. So it's 5:31. Sorry, Spanish speaking interpreters. But as Nina says, happy solstice, summer solstice. Yeah, she should get something in writing. Maybe I would. Yeah, if she's confused by it, just follow up. I mean, it's kind of like anybody calling and saying they want to give you services and you don't know who they are. That seems random. I would follow up just for understanding. All right, so we will let you go and we'll see you in July. Thank you all for joining us.